you for at least part of your Monday morning. And for those that want to watch, yes, the second screen experience is all yours at youtube.com/@TheKostos, TheKostos. Nick off this week. I will be in today, Thursday, and Friday. John Jastrzemski tomorrow. Sal Licata on Wednesday. We've got a lot to talk about because as the preseason winds down in the NFL, things are starting to crystallize in a lot of different spots. We're also just 5 days away from the kickoff of college football. Cannot wait. I can hear the marching band in the back of my head. I can smell the tailgate off in the distance. Cannot wait. And of course, things are heating up in the pennant races for not just the wild card spots in the AL and NL, but particularly at the top of that National League race, which we will get into in just a couple of minutes. A massive decision to come down in Cleveland later today. And ahead of that decision being made, we will talk to Mary Kay Cabot, the Dean of Cleveland Browns reporters from the Cleveland Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com. She will join us in 30 minutes right here on Westwood One Sports. And coming up at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, the legend himself, ESPN's Herm Edwards, will join us to talk about all the storylines revolving around the winding down of the NFL preseason, which happens this coming weekend. A lot to get to. Welcome back to esteemed executive producer Bill Zimmerman, who was off for a couple of weeks. He is refreshed, recharged, ready to go. Tyler's here. Kenny's here. Mike is here. Laura's on the board, making sure she hits the button if I say anything I'm not supposed to. And we are ready to go with the 5 biggest stories of the day. Right off the top, it's time for the high five.
5.
Swing and a fly ball. Center field. Going back is Church. Back toward the wall. It is over! Off the batter's eye. Out to Ashburn Alley. Kyle Schwarber has just completed an improbable comeback. A 2-run game-winning home run. The Phillies down 4-zip. They win it 6-4.
Oh, this is Thriller. I can't sing like Michael Jackson. I'm not going to disparage the song like that. But they are shuffling towards you like the zombies in Thriller, just slowly working their way towards you, and you can't do anything about it. The Phillies have won 9 in a row now. Kyle Schwarber with the walk-off home run. They come back from 4 down at home against St. Louis yesterday to do so. Tom McCarthy on the call on NBCSN Philadelphia. And we knew this was going to happen, right? While Philly fans were wringing their hands and gnashing their teeth just a few weeks ago, oh no, this is terrible. They're falling apart. Please. We're going to get deep in about 90 minutes into the complexion of the race for those 2 byes in the National League playoff race. You'd rather not play in a 3-game wild card series if you don't have to. Phillies are in a weird spot, chasing down the Braves for the division, also chasing down the Brewers and the Dodgers for the top of the National League. There are 4, maybe 5 teams involved in that race for the top 2 seeds in the NL, and the Phillies refuse to go away. They are zombies, and they have one reason in particular. I believe we could be hurtling towards a rematch in the NLCS, not of last year's NLCS, mind you, but of a couple of legendary league championship series almost 20 years ago. And I'll give you everything I think about the top of that National League race, like I said, coming up in about 90 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. Meanwhile, in Seattle, number 4.
4.
Smoked into right field, doesn't have the height. Man, that was a screamer from PCA. Number 33 got out fast. A 10 spot today for the Cubs.
They seem really happy in Seattle, don't they? A 10 spot was just about halfway to where they were going, the Cubbies, yesterday. 19-2. They absolutely smoked the Mariners in Seattle. Aaron Goldsmith on the call on Mariners TV, and you could hear the resignation in his voice. And at one point during the flight of that ball, which was an absolute laser beam, you could hear he's trying to will it to come down a little bit. Oh, is it going to have the height to clear the... Yeah, it's gone. Whew. PCA further solidifying his National League MVP chase. And the Cubs, one of those 5 teams that I mentioned earlier, in the race for the top 2 spots in the National League. They're probably not catching the Brewers. Let's just be honest about that. They're going to be the top wild card. Maybe they're battling with Philly/Atlanta for the top wild card. Either way, they're headed for October. And if we're going to talk about rotations, maybe theirs is enough to have to play through those extra 2 or 3 games in the wild card round and go on a little bit of a run in October. But the story in Seattle yesterday was not the Cubbies laying 19 on the Mariners. It was the Mariners, after getting a brief reprieve Saturday night. Cade Anderson's debut, Randy Arozarena with a couple of homers, including the walk-off winner Saturday night. And for just a brief moment, everyone in the world of baseball who's been watching the American League going, maybe the Mariners might come back to life. I heard Buster Olney yesterday morning say, there's a lot of people around baseball, in particular the American League, who don't want to face the Mariners if they get into the playoffs. Please, if I'm in the AL playoff field, give me the Mariners. The rotation has been wildly inconsistent all year. They only find offense in spurts. Cal Raleigh is a shell of what he was last year. Fewer hits this year than he had home runs last year. The Mariners are a disaster. They are cooked. They are Dunsky. The crazy part is, I say all that about the Mariners, and yet you go to the standings page and you go, wait a second, the Mariners are done? They're cooked? You're telling me that there's no way, right? The Mariners are still somehow just 3 games back in the wild card, despite being 7 games under 500. That's how bad the American League is. But I'm here to tell you, 3-game deficit in the wild card, no matter. The Mariners are, in fact, cooked. Let's keep it in Seattle for just a second. Number 3.
3.
We send their best wishes to the rookie Bud Clark, and we've touched on some of the injury issues. Charbonnet coming off the torn ACL. They lost Bobo on Friday. This is the second injury in today's game, and they hope to have Nick Kostos back early in the regular season.
Yeah.
He's coming off an injury as well.
Kenny Albert on Fox last night. Don't know if you paid attention to preseason football on Fox last night, but the Seahawks were in Nashville playing the Tennessee Titans, and they handled business as reigning Super Bowl champs are wont to do in preseason games. I have my questions about Cam Ward still. After a shaky start, he kind of got it together. But that's not the story in last night's final preseason game of the second weekend of the preseason in the NFL. The story is the Bud Clark injury. And that's on top of all the other things that you just heard Kenny Albert list. And on top of a secondary that now is looking like, oof. Are we really in a good spot? Reek Woolen leaves in free agency. There would be people that argue they weren't necessarily interested in keeping Reek Woolen. Devin Witherspoon got his extension. Josh Job's still around. And then you got some rookies. Julian Neal, but Bud Clark, one of those rookies taken in the second round, now done. All of a sudden, a team that went out and signed Trayvon Diggs this past week, a team that is taking a flyer on Terry and Arnold, even though we don't suspect he'll contribute at all if he does early this season. All of a sudden, a team whose secondary has always felt like a strength, especially last year, is in a weird spot. Again, you heard Kenny reference Nick Emenwari, supposed to be back soon. But the last thing Seattle can afford is to have its secondary get real thin real fast, and it feels like the Bud Clark injury, even though we're talking about a rookie in the safety rotation, still one that we're going to count on. That Bud Clark injury could be something we're looking back on in another month and saying, man, that secondary is beat up and in a bad way. Number 2.
2.
I think you guys know too, and I think the whole world knows. It has nothing to do about the performance. It's a little bit personal than that. So I think that's it's a disrespectful thing.
Oh, was it disrespectful, Deshaun? Were your feelings hurt? Deshaun Watson played terribly in the Browns' second preseason game against the Bills. Look, if you're a Deshaun Watson apologist, maybe you make mention of the fact that he played in the second half with a bunch of backups, but he also played against a bunch of backups, and he looked really bad. He threw a pick at one point, and the crowd started raining boos down on him in Cleveland. And he went on during his little podium tantrum Saturday night to mention how this is the same fan base that cheered when he tore his Achilles a couple years ago. Do you know why they boo when you throw picks, Deshaun? Do you know why they cheered when you tore your Achilles a couple years ago? Do you know why they'd rather see Shedeur Sanders, even with the baggage that he brings, as their starting quarterback rather than you? It's because they don't like you, Deshaun. They don't like you as a person because you've never really taken any accountability for what happened in Houston. You never have. And on top of that, you're not very good anymore. If you had walked into Cleveland and immediately paid off on the massive contract they gave you, Browns fans would look past it. As sports fans, we're very good at looking past people's personal foibles, and cheering for them anyway. If they win, if they're great, you don't win. You're not great. You're now just a broken down, beaten up, washed out quarterback who also, if the allegations are true from several years ago, also happens to be a giant creep. So that's why people boo you when you throw an interception, Deshaun. That's why they cheer when you get injured. If you can't read the room and understand all of that, then you're more lost than any of us originally thought. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't. After all of this, performance being a major part of it, but also the little baby tantrum thrown at the podium the other night by Deshaun Watson. If Todd Monken steps to the podium at 12:50 Eastern this afternoon in Berea, Ohio, and declares Shedeur Sanders the starting quarterback week 1. Now, there's always a chance because it's Cleveland, and God knows they've never mismanaged a quarterback situation before. There's always a chance Jimmy Haslam literally walks up to Todd Monken 30 seconds before he's about to take the podium and says, "Hey, we're going with Deshaun." And Todd Monken goes, "Good Lord, what did I decide to walk into here in Cleveland?" That's always a chance. We'll get into exactly what Todd Monken will say, what we think he should say, coming up in about 10 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. And as mentioned just a bit ago, Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com, who's been covering the Browns for years, is going to give us her insight coming up in about 20 minutes here on You Better You Bet as we count down the 5 biggest stories of the day. Number 1.
This specific case is rooted in a state court ruling in Baton Rouge, not surprisingly. And that state court issued a temporary restraining order which allowed 16 football players to essentially use a loophole to come back. This is tied to the NCAA making the so-called 5-and-5 or age-based eligibility rules. And Daquan Wright is one of the players who played for 4 years in college. And if he had been included in the current class, in that rule that had been passed earlier, would have had an option to play back in college this year.
That is Pete Thamel on ESPN last night explaining what's going on in Daquan Wright's case specifically. Daquan Wright was second-team All-SEC tight end at Ole Miss last year, got drafted, was then ended up in Browns camp, played in preseason games this year, but was waived yesterday by the Browns and has already come to an agreement to transfer to LSU to play with his former head coach, Lane Kiffin, in Baton Rouge. And the sky is falling once again in college football. Every time we have something different happen that our brains aren't used to processing, you immediately go on social media and see people go, "Oh, it's the end of college football as we know it." It's not. It's not. I'm here to tell you it's not the end of college football. The sky is not falling. This is a one-year anomaly. And furthermore, I don't think it's going to hurt Daquan Wright at all. I want to get deep into this in about an hour here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today. But I have just been absolutely beaten down by people ready to storm the gates of college football. I can't believe they'd let this happen. I'll tell you why it's happening, why it actually makes sense, and why it's not the death knell for college football that your angry drunk uncle wants to tell you it is. That's coming up in about an hour here on Westwood One Sports. But coming up next, as I mentioned, just after 12:45 this afternoon, Todd Monken is going to step to a podium in northeastern Ohio and tell us who his starting quarterback is going to be, and our long national nightmare will be over. But what will he say, and what should he say? I'll tell you next on Westwood One Sports.
College.
None of us like to be booed. We all like to be appreciated. I think that's just human, okay? I think he emptied his heart a little bit, and I don't think that says who he is. I see the competitor in. I see the everyday work he puts in, and he wants to get back to where he was as best he can.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Browns head coach Todd Monken yesterday reacting to Deshaun Watson's comments following Saturday's game, where he talked about his feelings were hurt when he got booed. Coming up in less than 10 minutes, or just about 10 minutes, I should say, Mary Kay Cabot, Dean of Cleveland Browns Reporters, is going to join us to give us her insight on what exactly we'll hear from Todd Monken this afternoon, right around 12:45, 12:50 in Berea, Ohio, when he steps to a podium and declares who his starting quarterback is going to be week 1 of the NFL season when Cleveland opens up at Carolina. Is that right? No, at Jacksonville. Sorry. So Todd Monken's going to speak. Hopefully his voice is recovered. And he'll tell us what the decision was. Sorry, I know that phrase still hits a very sore spot in the psyche of Cleveland sports fans. He'll tell us what the decision was. And what I think he will say is something along the lines of, both guys have really worked hard and we appreciate everything they've done. And we really think both guys have a lot to contribute to this team. Deshaun's veteran experience, obviously. Shedeur, nobody can argue how hard he's worked during this training camp and his talent and his ability. But we feel what's best for the organization right now and the team going into week 1 in Jacksonville is Shedeur Sanders will be starting for us week 1. That's what I think he's going to say. That's what I think he's going to say. What he should say, Todd Monken, this afternoon, is, listen, the owner damn near forced me to start Deshaun Watson because he's a sunk cost at this point, and he's trying to squeeze whatever little remaining value he can out of that contract before inevitably we have to cut ties with this guy and eat the remainder of the deal and wipe the egg off our faces. So I damn near had to tell you this afternoon that Deshaun Watson is going to be the starter, but I'm here to tell you that I won this battle. I want to start Shedeur, and he will be our guy week 1. That's what Todd Monken should say. He won't. He's a good soldier. He's a brand new head coach. And he's going to give you all the lip service that you need to assuage Deshaun Watson's singed feelings. They booed me, coach. Yeah, because you suck. That's why. And you're probably a creep on top of it, too. You're allegedly a creep on top of it. So, yeah, they booed you when you sucked. And they cheered a couple years ago when you got hurt because they don't like you. And I don't blame Browns fans for not liking Deshaun Watson. Not one bit. If Deshaun Watson had won and been good, you know what would have happened? Go ahead, be a creep, an alleged creep 20 times over. Go ahead. If you win, almost all sins are forgiven. That's the way sports works at the highest levels. The morality police may not like it, but that's the way it works. And I'm not here to make that decision. I'm just here to tell you that's the way it is. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos, by the way, today here on You Better You Bet. It is Westwood One Sports. We are presented by BetMGM. Herm Edwards is going to join us later. We're also going to talk to Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns, in less than 10 minutes about her insight on this quarterback battle between Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson and what she thinks Todd Monken will have to say later this afternoon. But Deshaun, you forget reading the room. I don't think Deshaun Watson even knows the room exists in order to be able to read it. Read the room, my friend. As long as you stink, nobody's going to go out of their way to cheer for you. Why would they? So the fact that he walked to the podium Saturday night, and credit to whoever asked him those questions. The fact that he walked to the podium and in answer to those questions bared his soul or let out some emotion, as Todd Monken put it, tells you exactly where his head is. He can't get over the fact that people hate him. He can't. He can't push past it. There have been plenty of athletes, high-profile ones too, in this world who have done terrible things or been accused of doing terrible things, who were able to compartmentalize well enough that they got back on the field or back on the court or back on the ice or whatever it was and played well and were able to push all of that to the side and still perform. Deshaun Watson clearly can't. And if you're going to be the starting quarterback for a National Football League team, if you're going to be mentally tough enough to handle that gig, especially in Cleveland, where credit to the fans, they're as diehard as any. Dudes keep showing up in dog masks and eating milk bones when it's 10 below zero and they've won 3 games. If you're not going to be able to show up and have the mental fortitude to accept some boos when you play like crap, I'll be honest, you just don't have what it takes to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I imagine that's probably some of what the conversations were behind the scenes in the last 36 hours at the Browns facility. And so if Todd Monken gets his way, I think Shedeur Sanders will be the guy when he makes this announcement later this afternoon. If Jimmy Haslam gets his way, they'll probably roll Deshaun Watson out there week 1. Is that the dynamic that's been set up here? Is there any reason to believe that Watson will be the guy after the way he's performed in the preseason and after that little tantrum at the podium Saturday night? Or do the Browns actually get to the business of finding out what they have in Shedeur Sanders by going with him for the entirety of this season? We're going to ask the Dean of Cleveland Browns reporters, Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com. She joins us next on Westwood One Sports.
Who is under the most pressure this season?
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Didn't expect it to happen that way in Houston. Some breaking news this morning that we'll get to in just a little bit. Top of the hour, where we may have found our first bust of the 2024 draft class already. Herm Edwards going to join us later as well. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos this morning here on Westwood One Sports. It is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Of course, later this afternoon, we've talked about it a lot for the last few days. And again, this morning, Todd Monken going to talk to the media in Cleveland and is expected to name the Browns starting quarterback for week one. A very interesting dynamic, given how Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders have performed this preseason, and Deshaun Watson's reaction to being booed during Saturday's loss to Buffalo. Here to talk to us about the entire situation and give us some insight on it, the Dean of Cleveland Browns reporters from the Cleveland Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com, Mary Kay Cabot, joins us now here on Westwood One Sports. Good morning, Mary Kay. Thanks for making the time. How are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Good. We've been talking a lot, as most football fans have over the last few days and weeks, about what the Browns' decision is going to look like. For a while, it felt like it was almost a fait accompli that Deshaun Watson was going to get the starting job. A lot of people looked at the contract, trying to squeeze any remaining value out of it. But given Watson's performance Saturday and the way Shedeur Sanders has performed as well, I think he was 8 of 8 on the opening drive against Buffalo Saturday, and really seems to be showing greater and greater signs of maturity throughout camp and the preseason. Feels like the pendulum may be swinging back Shedeur's way. So what do you think Todd Monken says when he steps to that podium this afternoon?
You know, it's a good question. I still think it could probably go either way. I don't know how it's going to go. He said yesterday that Deshaun Watson's post-game remarks were not going to factor in. I don't know how they can't, but he claims that there is no way that he is factoring those in, and he's not going to let one emotional moment by Deshaun dictate this quarterback competition. So we'll have to see if that holds true as we move forward here. But I do think that up until that point, Deshaun had the decided edge. I feel like Todd Monken wanted to start the experienced veteran who he felt would give them the best chance to win. But while he has been kind of watching Deshaun Watson throughout this past couple of months, he's also seen Shedeur Sanders come very quickly up that learning curve. And he just continues to get better and better and better. He works harder and harder. And some of the things that they needed to see from him, they have seen over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it really does feel like the tide has turned a bit in Shedeur's favor. I know you said, Mary Kay, that Todd Monken, being a first-year head coach in Cleveland, probably would have preferred to have the veteran starting quarterback. But do you get the sense of how the rest of the organization has felt about the push and pull over this starting quarterback job, whether it be Jimmy and Dee Haslam and ownership, whether it be Andrew Berry in the front office? How does the organization as a whole look at what they've gotten from Watson and Sanders to this point when they go to make this decision?
Well, I think the truth of the matter here is that everybody in the organization, all they cared about, all they wanted was for Todd Monken to choose a quarterback that would give them the best chance to win. And I know that sounds like rhetoric, but that's really the truth. They want to get to winning this year. They need to sell some PSLs for a new stadium. They want to get out of losing heck that they've been in for the last couple of years. They won 8 games in the last 2 seasons, and they just don't want to have that losing culture infiltrate this young football team. So they have wanted to get to winning, and I do believe that many in the organization thought that at this moment in time, perhaps Deshaun Watson would be the best quarterback to accomplish that for them. But I don't know if people feel that way anymore. I just really don't know. So much has happened in the last 48 hours, and I think that it probably will have an impact on this competition.
Yeah, I know you said that Todd Monken reiterated yesterday that Deshaun Watson's statement Saturday night wouldn't have anything to do with it. But do you think it's a reflection on the ability of a starting quarterback's ability to sort of manage the moment, manage the situation, shut out the crowd, whether it's at home and you're getting booed or on the road, whatever it may be? and really truly lead the team forward? Does it put a big dent in the armor of Deshaun Watson's ability to be a veteran leader if he responds to that adversity from the crowd in that way, in your opinion?
Well, I thought that heading into this game that he was really going to need to show that he could handle the boos and that he could manage this situation effectively. And I don't think he was able to do that. And unless he convinces them that he can 100% regroup and go out there in front of that home crowd and not get rattled by the booing, then I don't see how he can be your quarterback for, this 17-game season, which half of those games happen to be at home. So I don't know if they take a chance and just try to see if he can get some victories for him in those first 2 games on the road. They also have 6 of their first 9 are on the road, so that would actually work in his favor. But I just think he showed something in that press conference that would have to give any team pause.
Mary Kay Cabot from Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the dean of Cleveland Browns reporters, with us here on Westwood One Sports, talking about what Todd Monken may decide and may tell us at 12:50 this afternoon in Berea, Ohio, about his decision to be the Browns starting quarterback in Week 1. If it's not Deshaun Watson, Mary Kay, if they do go with Shedeur Week 1, what's the future for Deshaun Watson? Does he stick in Cleveland as a backup the rest of the year? Is there a conceivable way for them to get out from underneath the enormous cap hit they would have to eat and just cut ties with Watson?
This is not a team that makes knee-jerk reactions. They've kept him around this long. He was very helpful to the young quarterbacks last year in Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. And if Shedeur wins the starting job, it certainly doesn't mean that he's going to be able to start all 17 games himself, and then you could turn to Deshaun Watson if you needed to. So I don't know that it would necessarily mean the end of Deshaun Watson for this season if he doesn't win the starting job, unless his team, his agents huddle up with the Browns and they all somehow come up with a way to make this better for everyone. I don't know what the plan would be there, but this is not a team that reacts to social media. It doesn't react to outside noise very much, so I could see them keeping him around.
I know you mentioned the desire of the organization to find some positivity this year, to find some wins, especially, like you said, knowing they've got to sell PSLs for the new stadium. But Cleveland Browns fans are notoriously loyal. I mean, you've got guys showing up in dog masks and eating milk bones in the end zone for the last 30 years, even when the team goes 0-16. So what are the Browns fans' level of patience, I guess, for what could be another rough year? And I guess conversely, what are their expectations for this season, especially if a lot of these fans get what they want, which would be Shedeur Sanders being the starting quarterback from the very beginning?
Well, Jimmy Haslam in training camp, when we asked him his expectations for the season, he said he's betting the over, which is 5.5 games. So I guess that's where the bar is set to win at least 6 games, and that would exceed last year's win total of 5. But of course, they wanted to do better than that. They wanted to see if they could perhaps win 7, 8, 9 games, maybe flirt with a wild card spot or something. They know they're not really a Super Bowl contender this year unless they got amazing quarterback play. But I think they expect to be sort of middle of the road, 7, 8 games or something like that this year, and then maybe try to make a big push next year. It's a very, very young football team. The future does look bright, but I don't think that they're counting on this year to be the one to get them to the promised land.
Before I let you run, Mary Kay, because I know you got to get to the facility and get ready for that press conference and everything else going on with the Browns today, what do you think Shedeur Sanders' reaction will be if, in fact, Watson is named the starter going into Week 1? I mentioned off the top of this conversation, he has shown more maturity this offseason, this training camp, this preseason. How do you think he'll handle it?
I think he'll handle it great. He's been very professional about those kinds of things. He's really grown up even a lot just this past off season. He went through a lot last year and just kind of working with the fourth team and having to work his way up. And I think he's learned a lot, grown a lot, and I think he'll handle it just fine. And I think he also will recognize that just because Deshaun gets the start for Week 1, if it happened that way, doesn't mean that Shador isn't going to start games this season. I think he will start games this season, whether it's in week 1 or somewhere else down the line.
Mary Kay Cabot, thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll look forward to keeping up with everything you're reporting on the Browns quarterback situation and everything going on in Cleveland this year. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The Dean of Cleveland Browns reporters, Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I'm sorry. It's regardless of who gets named the starter, it's going to feel like a toxic situation. It is, because if Watson gets named starter, I know Mary Kay just described how Shador, and I would agree, has seemed to gain a lot of maturity this offseason, this training camp, preseason. I still think it's going to sting, and that's something that's, whether he lets it show or not, going to affect Shador Sanders negatively. And I think conversely, if Sanders is named starter, what do we have? Do we have any reason to believe that Deshaun Watson isn't going to give us the boo-boo face? Oh, they booed me, and now I can't play. I mean, it's going to be a rough situation either way. And I think at this point, given that the ultimate goal this year, like a good year for the Browns, would be somehow winning 8 games, right? An 8-win season for the Browns would be very good. So you know you're not competing for a playoff spot this year. Go with Shador. If you can find a financial way, a financially feasible way, a salary cap feasible way to get out from underneath Watson's deal and move on from him, I would do that as well. And just go all in on Shador this year. Because leaving Watson lingering on the sideline, showing up as the backup every weekend, is not going to help the situation. That's what I would do. I would name Shador Sanders the starter and would find some way, somehow, to cut ties with Deshaun Watson. I think it's going to be half measures, honestly. I suspect Todd Monken is going to end up naming Shador Sanders the starter later this afternoon. But without a doubt, we're going to see Deshaun Watson start games for this team this year, because I think Shador's still a young quarterback, and even if he's growing and playing better than he has to this point, he's still going to have moments where they're going to be enticed to insert Watson into games, even if it's just because of injury. And if that's the case, it's going to be just as messy this year. The Browns are going to go 4-13, 5-12. And they're not going to really know what they have in Sanders. We'll talk to Herm Edwards at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. His thoughts on this mess and his thoughts on the preseason as a whole to this point, as we're through the first 2 weeks of the preseason. Final weekend of the preseason gets started Thursday, wraps up on Saturday. We've also got college ball starting on Saturday. And everybody in college football is crying that the sky is falling. I'll tell you why it isn't. Coming up in about 30 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. We are presented by BetMGM. And today, BetMGM players, you can have yourself an any sport parlay boost token right there inside your BetMGM app. Add a parlay wager to your bet slip and activate the token. If you win your wager that was made with that token, you'll receive extra winnings. Download the BetMGM app today, and please gamble responsibly. We are going to talk baseball in about an hour because the Phillies are still red hot. A walk-off come from behind win yesterday at home against the Cardinals. That's 9 in a row for them. The Dodgers won again. That's 6 in a row for them. The top of the National League race is fascinating, in my opinion. But breaking news in just the last 20, 25 minutes or so, the Astros have announced that they've fired general manager Dana Brown. That in and of itself is not shocking, that Dana Brown wasn't going to be around after this year, that his contract wasn't going to be renewed, that there was a lot of tension between he and Jim Crane, the owner, over what he was attempting to do at the trade deadline. It is somewhat surprising that you've got a division-leading team. I don't care if they're a game under 500 or not, a division-leading team firing their general manager with a month left in the regular season. That part of it is surprising to me. Tied with the Rangers for the lead atop the AL West. And 3 games ahead of the Mariners, who still somehow are like zombies and just refuse to die, even though they keep losing. They got smashed by the Cubs yesterday. The interesting part here is that the Astros said in late August, yeah, you know what? We're not going to let this thing ride out to the end of the season. I think we're done here. This is just my speculation. That's indicative of some sort of blow up between people behind the scenes. Dana Brown knowing that he's not going to have his contract renewed in the offseason. Jim Crane knowing that if he's going to go in a different direction anyway, the hell with it, we're just going to do it now. But still somewhat surprising that it would happen at this time of year. Like I said, with the Astros tied for the AL West lead. And look, there are going to be 2 teams that make the playoffs in the AL in all likelihood with records right at or just below 500. If the season ended right now, I just mentioned it, the Astros are 65 and 66. The Rangers are as well. The Guardians are 65 and 66. There's a good chance we have a wild card series in the American League with 2 sub 500 teams playing each other. And I heard somebody mention over the weekend, well, you want parity in baseball, this is what you get. No, that's not how it works. Parity doesn't mean bad teams make the playoffs. Parity means, at least in my opinion, that you have more teams with a chance. A good sign of parity is that the White Sox are still leading their division in 6 games over 500. A good sign of parity is that the Rays are running away with the American League lead. A good sign of parity would be that teams like the Diamondbacks and even the Marlins are still within shouting distance of the NL final wild card spot. Those are all good signs of parity. Parity is not a bad thing. And I can't stand that you're going to have some people over the course of the next 7 to 8 months while we end this season and pivot towards a very contentious winter in Major League Baseball are going to carry water for the big money teams and say, oh, you wanted parity. You had 2 sub 500 teams make the playoffs. That's not what parity means. That's not how that works, Junior. Parity means more teams have a more reasonable chance of making it to the postseason and maybe actually doing something in October. Stop carrying water for the big money teams. We'll get back into baseball right around 10:40 Eastern, 7:40 Pacific here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Coming up, the 2024 class of quarterbacks in the NFL was supposed to be one of the great ones, but it may be one of the fastest in finding its first bust. I'll tell you who it is next here on Westwood One Sports.
to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here? No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
I promise you, you have not accidentally tuned into a Cleveland radio show this morning. It just feels that way because there's a lot of news coming from Cleveland. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. It is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. And we'll table the conversation I was preparing to have with you about the first big bust of the 2024 draft class, the class that had 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. We can get to that later because the news is out. According to sources, the Cleveland Browns are naming Deshaun Watson as their starting quarterback. Shedeur Sanders will be the backup. And, you know, there's a funny little clip that always plays in the back of my mind. If you remember in 2020, when the Browns were actually good, remember that? Kevin Stefanski, Baker Mayfield. In 2020, the week before the wild card game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, in which the Browns just trounced the Steelers, and Ben Roethlisberger sat on the bench crying after the game. Juju Smith-Schuster, who was then a Pittsburgh Steeler, was quoted during a press conference as saying, "The Browns is the Browns." And everybody in Cleveland, rightfully so, took it very personally because that year the Browns weren't the Browns. They were something more. They won a wild card game. They had the spirit of Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski. And that clip always plays in repeat in the back of my head when I see the Cleveland Browns do something that's just the, well, Brownsiest. The Browns is the Browns. And that's reinforced by this decision. Deshaun Watson is going to be the starter week 1 for Cleveland in Jacksonville, and Shedeur Sanders will back him up. Todd Monken will get to step to a podium in a little less than 3 hours and try to explain this to the Cleveland media. I don't buy that it's his decision because Todd Monken just yesterday was talking to the Cleveland media about the performance of his 2 quarterbacks. And Todd Monken, after seeing Deshaun Watson go out there and fall on his face on Saturday and then act like a toddler after being booed off the field by the crowd, Todd Monken himself said that Deshaun Watson's performance was not good enough. Listen to this.
No, it's not. I mean, the business we are in is a performance-based business. I mean, it is what it is. When we expect a service, we're going to be disappointed when we don't get that service. If you go to a restaurant and your soup comes out and it's cold, you're going to be pissed. Okay, that's just the way it is. If you order from the grocery store and they deliver it and 6 of your eggs are broken, you're going to be pissed. Okay, so I get it. That's what we're in. I mean, that's why we're paid what we are. I mean, to perform at a high level. And when we don't, then that's the repercussions of it. We've run to this smoke. This is the job we've chosen. So this is part of it.
Todd Monken yesterday. Todd, your soup isn't just cold. We've got some ice cold gazpacho for you. Here's Deshaun Watson. Start him. And anybody that tries to tell you that this is Todd Monken's decision, I don't know this for a fact. This is just me speculating, but I don't think it's hard to read these tea leaves. Anybody that tells you that Todd Monken, who, as Mary Kay Cabot just told us a couple minutes ago, wants to win football games. He's a head coach. He's a ball coach, man. He wants to win football games. Even if he knows the absolute height of this team's potential is winning 8 games. He still wants to go out and win as many games as possible. There's no way Todd Monken has watched these 2 quarterbacks and said, well, Deshaun gives us the best chance to win. There's no way. That's Todd Monken's honest evaluation. Not a chance in the world. That's Todd Monken's decision. This is Jimmy Haslam. This is Andrew Barry. This is the Cleveland Browns organization once again being the Cleveland Browns. The Browns is the Browns. Deciding to exist in the sunk cost of Deshaun Watson. Here it is, Todd. You wanted that hot bowl of soup? It's ice cold. It's Deshaun Watson. Do me a favor, Todd. Go out there in a few hours and tell the media why you think Deshaun Watson is going to give us a better chance to win ball games than Shedeur Sanders. Look, I'm not some massive Shedeur Sanders fan, but you can't ignore the fact that the dude was better in the preseason during Watson and that Watson is a shell of his former self. This is nonsensical. This is the organization making a decision purely based on not wanting to have egg on their face for having to cut Watson loose now if they did. Cutting him now, according to Spot Track, would cripple the Browns with an $86 million dead cap hit for next year. Jimmy Haslam wanted Deshaun Watson. He went out and got Deshaun Watson. Wildly overpaid for him at the time in draft picks. Then he wildly overpaid him with a contract. With a boatload of guaranteed money. And now, he's once again recommitting to Deshaun Watson. Knowing full well that the Cuyahoga will burn once again if Browns fans have to watch Deshaun Watson play like crap all year. And you know what? I don't blame Browns fans. You know, I've mentioned before, I've grown up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and the Steelers and Browns long had a very heated rivalry that is still a division rivalry, but has cooled off over the years and isn't quite the same because the Steelers are routinely at least pretty good, and the Browns are, well, routinely the Browns. But despite that rivalry, I've always held a weird little warm soft spot in one corner of my heart for Browns fans, especially after they had their team stolen by Baltimore. Art Modell sneaking out in the middle of the night in 1999. And I've always had that soft spot because, as I said to Mary Kay Cabot a couple minutes ago, Browns fans show up. The diehards will die harder than Bruce Willis jumping off the roof at Nakatomi Plaza. They are die hard, baby. They show up. Doesn't matter how cold, how snowy, how windy. They will show up in their dog masks, eat their milk bones, and bark from the end zone. Dog pound. Doesn't matter how many 0-16, 1-16, 2-15, 3-14 years they have to exist through. How many quarterback names now go down the back of that jersey? Doesn't matter to them. Their team is the Browns, and they are there for the Browns. But Mary Kay brought up a great point a couple minutes ago. They're feeling the pressure. They're building this new stadium. Which, by the way, the Cleveland Browns playing in a stadium with a roof is an abomination to football. But you've heard me mention that before, and that's a conversation for a different day. They're building this new stadium, and they have to sell these personal seat licenses. And they have to give hope to not necessarily the diehards, who are going to scrape together every last dollar they can because they have to be there when the Browns play. They wear the dog masks. They eat the milk bones. They bark at the opposition from the end zone. But to everybody else in Northeast Ohio, they've got to sell people on this team actually has a chance. This is why you should take, I don't know, a quarter of your salary and invest it in season tickets and personal seat licenses. This is why you should care about the Browns. Why would you? If you were just an average sports fan in Cleveland, why would you invest any more time in the Cleveland Browns? They're putting a guy out there as their starting quarterback week 1, who not only is allegedly to be a creep 20 plus times over, but also can't even handle it when you boo him for throwing a preseason interception. He's a creep, allegedly, and a toddler all rolled up into one. And that's going to be the face of your franchise. Good job, Jimmy Haslam. Maybe the worst ownership group in sports. And there are a lot of bad owners in sports. A lot. There are a lot of dumb people that own franchises in major professional sports. But Jimmy Haslam may be near the top of the list. He may wear the crown because I guarantee you this was his decision. I guarantee you that he backed Todd Monken into a corner and said, well, that's what we're going to have to do. And now Todd Monken's going to walk out there and have to explain to everybody through gritted teeth why Deshaun Watson's going to be his starter week 1. And look, I didn't think Todd Monken was going to be the guy to bring the Browns to the promised land anyway. I think he's the guy before the guy at the very least. But you can't do this to the guy. The first big major decision as your head coach, and the owner walks in. Again, you can't tell me anything otherwise. I won't listen to it. The owner walks in and says, it's going to be Deshaun. Jimmy, did you watch Saturday's game? Did you watch him cry like a little toddler after the game about getting booed? We can't have that guy leading this team. The guys are behind Shedeur. Did you watch Shedeur on that opening drive? March down the field, score a touchdown? Well, I mean, $86 million dead cap if we cut loose Deshaun now. That's the reason this is happening. Because Jimmy Haslam doesn't want to admit he was wrong. It's going to be an absolute disaster in Cleveland. This will be another thing Mary Kay Cabot had to say when she joined us a couple minutes ago. The dean of Browns reporters in Cleveland. And I agree with her. Shedeur Sanders has shown increasing signs of maturity this offseason, this preseason, this training camp. I mean, nobody's going to mistake him with an absolutely perfect leader at this point. But he has grown. This is really going to test whether Shedeur Sanders has actually grown in maturity or not over the last year. If he can handle this, if he can just sit by and be a good soldier while Deshaun Watson craps the bed, which he inevitably will do, and the city boos him off the field yet again, then we will know Shedeur Sanders really has grown up and matured along the way. When does that happen, by the way? They open at Jacksonville, then go to Tampa. Baker Mayfield's going to be sitting on the opposite sideline just smirking the entire time. Then they host Carolina. They host the Steelers. They visit the Jets in week 5. Here's the crazy thing about the first 10 weeks of the Browns' schedule. If they had started Shedeur, if they had decided to start Shedeur and actually gave him an opportunity to grow off of what he'd shown them during the preseason, then the Browns had a chance to actually win maybe 4 games in their first 10. Look, I have my questions about Jacksonville. Carolina, wouldn't be the first time they beat the Steelers at home. Jets, a trip to Nashville in week 7, the Titans. The Steelers again. A trip to New Orleans to play the Saints in week 9. I mean, there are multiple opportunities. There are 6 opportunities there for wins for the Browns in the first 10 weeks. There was a realistic chance they could have gotten to the bye week at like 4-6. Not with Deshaun Watson as quarterback, I'm sorry. And I give him till that second home game, week 4 against the Steelers. Like I said, it wouldn't be the first time the Steelers went up to Cleveland and played down to the level of competition. But I would not be the least bit surprised If Deshaun Watson looks terrible in that game after not looking great against Carolina at home, probably hearing a few boos then as well. May they start out 0-3, 0-4, and he gets unmercilessly booed off the field. And maybe Shedeur gets to start week 5 in Jersey against the Jets. I don't see him lasting more than 4 weeks. I don't. Just a terrible decision. This is what happens when you let dumb people own sports teams. You can't tell me that this wasn't Jimmy Haslam's decision. I don't care if Todd Monken stands up there this afternoon and 110% owns it as his own. I'm not buying it. I'm just not. Herm Edwards is going to join us at the top of the hour. We'll talk about the decision by the Browns to start Deshaun Watson week 1. We'll talk about the rest of what his takeaways are from the first 2 weeks of the preseason as we are quickly hurtling towards the start of the regular season. And we're now just 5 days away from the start of college football. And the sky is falling. Oh, no, it's not. I'll tell you why it's not the end of the world for college football. Daquan Wright going back to the college game. That's next on Westwood One Sports.
The NFL preseason.
This specific case is rooted in a state court ruling in Baton Rouge, not surprisingly. And that state court issued a temporary restraining order which allowed 16 football players to essentially use a loophole to come back. This is tied to the NCAA making the so-called 5-and-5 or age-based eligibility rules. And Daquan Wright is one of the players who played for 4 years in college. And if he had been included in the current class, in that rule that had been passed earlier, would have had an option to play back in college this year.
Welcome back
Pete
to
Thamel.
You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Pete Thamel on ESPN last night explaining the Daquan Wright decision to go back to college with his former head coach Lane Kiffin, for whom he was a second-team All-SEC tight end last year at Ole Miss, to go to Baton Rouge, play for LSU. The subtle shade thrown at LSU and Baton Rouge there by Pete in that report on ESPN last night. And by all accounts, the sky is falling. This is the end of college football. I'll tell you why it's not in just a second. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM. Thanks to each and every one of you joining us this morning on affiliates across the country on Westwood One Sports. Those of you inside the Westwood One Sports app, good job by you getting it and getting ready for the football season. Your home for the NFL is Westwood One. Also, the best college games every weekend. Also inside the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and on Sirius XM Channel 375. Herm Edwards will join us at the top of the hour, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, with his reaction to Deshaun Watson being named the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I think I've calmed down just a bit. Here's the thing. I'm not even a Browns fan. I'm not. I'm the last person who wants to see the Browns do well. But it's just ridiculous. I can't. Jimmy Haslam may be the worst owner in sports. You can't convince me this wasn't his decision. I feel for Todd Monken when he has to step up in front of that podium later this afternoon and explain to the world why he's making the decision to start Deshaun Watson. Air quotes were being made there if you're not watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@thekostos, THEKOSTOS. Again, Chris Mack in for Nick today. Again on Thursday and Friday as well. The sky is not falling. I know that it's very difficult to process, okay? I want to start there. It is just jarring to the system, right? To see a player who was in an NFL training camp and playing in NFL preseason games go back to college. It does not compute. Smoke comes out of our ears. We go full scanners and our heads vibrate and explode. But I'm here to tell you that it's not the end of college football. Every decision that has been allowed to be made, and I say that because the NCAA doesn't stop anything from happening anymore. Every decision that's been allowed to be made in college athletics for the last 5 years or so has been decried and derided as the end of college sports as we know it. And it's not. Is it very different? Yeah, it's different. But how is that shocking to you? I mean, we've been talking about the end of college football as we know it for the last 30 years, people. I still remember living in Texas as a kid and grown men in 10-gallon hats crying in their beers over the dissolving of the Southwest Conference. It's never going to be the same. Guess what? It's okay. They've found a way. The creation of playoffs and BCS and then an expanded playoff. College football survived. It's always survived. NIL, the portal. Is it messy? Yeah, it's always survived. It's always survived. And it's going to survive this. Because this really is a one-year blip on the radar. So a one-year blip on the radar. Daquan Wright and whoever else may decide going back to school is the path for them. Were not afforded a fifth year of eligibility. They fell in this weird little hole as 2022 high school graduates who somehow didn't end up with a fifth year of eligibility. And so the courts in Louisiana have decided, and in other places, hey, they can have their fifth year of eligibility. Even if they were drafted, even if they showed up in training camps, even if they showed up in preseason games, they can go back. And you would do the same damn thing. You would. And I would too. You're scratching and fighting and clawing for a practice squad spot every single week, always on the roster bubble, maybe getting $13,000 that week, maybe not. Maybe being waived for a week to make room for somebody else and being asked to hang out in an apartment somewhere in a city that you don't really know that well, so you might get a call back. Or you go back to a place where you know you have a job, and that's what it is in college football, by the way. It's a job. You go back to a place where you know you have a job, and you're going to get paid a few $100,000. The hell would you do? I know what I'd do. Greater security and more money? Yeah, I'm going there. And if that doesn't compute for you, if you're one of those weirdos who says, oh, you should want to stay and compete, please, spare me, ball coach. It has nothing to do about his desire to compete. It's about his desire to make money for himself and his family. You don't want to do the same thing? No, I want to compete. Okay. So the next time somebody offers you a more secure job with more money, you're going to look at him and say, no, I want to compete. BS. You take the better job. You take better security. That's all these guys are doing. Because it is a job. That gets lost in the sauce here, too. Everybody moaning and wailing, oh, it's the end of college football. What are we doing? College football has been a glorified, free minor league system for the NFL for more than half a century. So now people are going to get upset that the rabbit has the gun. Really, now you're going to be upset. They've been a free developmental system for the NFL for as long as they've existed. Guess what? This is what happens sometimes. It's free market, baby. Free enterprise. If a guy can get paid more to go play in Baton Rouge for a year and it's a more secure position, damn straight that's what he's going to do. And I'd do it, and you'd do it. Don't lie. It's not the end of college football. It's not even that wildly stupid when you consider the fact that there are no rules anymore. None. And the fact that people can't still, we're more than half a decade deep into the NIL and portal era. And people still can't compute that. The starting quarterback for North Carolina on Saturday will be on his fourth school in 6 years. There are no rules. People bounce from place to place to place to get what's best for them. The same way everybody else in the world does. I love how we hold athletes to these higher standards. Like, well, no, he should want to stay there and fight to be on the practice squad for $13,000 a week. You wouldn't do the same thing. Neither would I. And here's the other part of this, too. You have college coaches talking about how this is it. This is the end. You know, what about the poor kids coming out of high school What are they going to do? Dan Lanning, in fact, just the other day saying it's not fair for college football for NFL players to come back. Go ahead, Laura.
I mean, I think there's a lot of negatives that are involved around this. One, once you go to the NFL, to me, you're in the NFL. You don't get the opportunity to come back. Two, most of us have built our rosters and you have a limited roster limit now. So if you invited somebody back to your team, that means you're kicking somebody else off your team, right? To match your roster limits. I don't think that's fair to the players that worked all summer, all spring and put themselves in position to be ready to work for a team, to have somebody come back. But ultimately, it used to be once you had an agent or once you went and did the combine or once you went to all those things qualified as you are no longer an amateur, you're a professional now. Once you declare for the draft. So to let any of those players come back, fair or unfair to them, it's unfair to the sport. And I think it's unfair to the players that are on current teams, for those guys to be coming back.
Yeah, it's unfair to the young guys, the freshmen, right? The guys who just got out of high school and are trying to earn a spot on a roster. There's no way they'll ever get on a roster now, right? Tennessee has named true freshman Faison Brandon their starting quarterback for week 1. But freshmen don't have a chance to compete. If you are good enough, you will play. It's that simple. If you are good enough, you will play. You will be given an opportunity. And the same thing goes for these people. I saw this last night. Hold on. I want to make sure I get it right. Chase Goodbread, who is a Tuscaloosa news columnist down in Alabama, posted on X last night. In response to someone else saying that GMs of NFL franchises should blacklist Daquan Wright and any other players that go back. Chase Goodbread said, spoke to an NFL scout about how they'll perceive these guys when they're knocking on the NFL's door again in a year. Quote, won't be forgotten, was the answer. The stigma will be real. Please. Please. If you can play, a team will sign you or draft you. That's what matters. We just had this conversation in relation to creepo Deshaun Watson. He's not good anymore. That's why people boo him. He's a creep and he sucks. Same thing holds true when NFL teams go out looking for players. They don't care if you went to class. They don't care if you're a jerk. They don't care if you're a criminal. If you're good at football is what matters first and foremost. Same thing holds for the freshmen coming up to the college level. If you're good at football, that's what matters. Tennessee's starting a true freshman at quarterback this year. You know why? Because he's good. That's what matters. Cry me a river. The best players play, or at least they should. It's not the end of college football. Come on, it's not 1975. Keith Jackson isn't on the play-by-play. You are looking live at the Rose Bowl. It's a terrible Keith Jackson impression, Chris. Don't ever do that again. Thank you. Noted. It ain't the old days. Nebraska's not running the wishbone. It's not the Big 8. Things are different now. And this group of guys, 16 or so, who only got 4 years of eligibility, some of them are going to show up in college this year. And I don't blame them 1 ounce for going and getting paid. And coaches are going to cry, even though they're going to add them to their rosters. They're going to cry, oh, I had to cut little Jimmy, the freshman, the 4-star. I had to. I didn't have room on the roster. Well, guess what? This whole can of worms was opened when coaches decided to start jumping around from team to team to make as much money as they could, right? And we all looked around at each other and we said, wait, coaches can do that. Coaches can jump team to team, year to year, and make as much money as they want. Why aren't the guys who are actually playing the game allowed to do that? And then we ended up with NIL and the transfer portal. And we found a little bit of a leveling of the playing field, right? Again, it's no fun when the rabbit has the gun, when players get to do what they want to do, right? That's no fun. Because then it forces a coach to make a tough decision about little Jimmy, the 4-star, who's player number 98 on the roster. If little Jimmy was good enough, you'd keep him. Or, in the case of Tennessee, you'd start the freshman. Let's stop pretending like college football is the victim here. The NFL has had their way with college football for the last 3/4 of a century, and now all of a sudden players are standing up and doing what's best for them. We're all going to survive. I promise you that. Ohio State's still going to play Texas. LSU's still going to play Ole Miss. People are still going to tailgate. We're still going to sing the alma mater. College football is going to be fine. Things change. Quit being a boomer. Deal with it. Coming up, like background dancers in Michael Jackson's Thriller, slowly shuffling their way in your direction, two teams that we always knew would be there come October are getting hot at just the right time. I'll tell you who next on Westwood One Sports.
ball, center field. Going back is Church. Back toward the wall. It is over! Off the batter's eye. Out to Ashford Alley. Kyle Schwarber has just completed an improbable comeback. A two-run game-winning home run. The Phillies down 4-zip. They win it 6-4.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Tom McCarthy on NBCSN Philadelphia, a walk-off Schwarbomb yesterday. You heard him mention the Phillies were down 4-0. I thought that was it. I thought the 8-game winning streak was coming to an end. Instead, they walk it off at home against the Cardinals, and it's now 9 in a row for the Phillies. And this might be the worst time of year for the rest of the National League for the Phillies and the Dodgers to be heating up. We'll get into that in just a second. But at BetMGM players today, an Any Sport Parlay Boost token is waiting for you inside your BetMGM app. To use it, all you got to do is add a parlay wager to your bet slip and then activate the token. If you win your wager that was made with that token, you'll receive extra winnings inside your BetMGM app right now. Download it today if you haven't yet, and please gamble responsibly. I still want to have a conversation about that 2024 quarterback class and how we've already, in my opinion, found our first bust from that class. We'll get into that in just a bit. Herm Edwards is going to join us at the top of the hour, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. I'm probably going to end up regretting this, but I think I'm back in on the Phillies. Look, it is a 5-team race for the top of the National League. The Cubs are now a full 6 games back of the Brewers in the Central, so it's not impossible, but it's not probable they'll catch the Brewers. That being said, we could probably whittle it down to maybe a 4-team race, but the Phillies, they're 8 games back of the Brewers. So maybe if we're talking about the race for the top 2 seeds in the National League, the chance to avoid the wild card series and go straight to the LDS, we should start to just reconcile ourselves to the fact that it's going to be the Brewers and the Dodgers. But if you're looking for somebody else out of those other 3, the Braves, the Cubs, the Phillies, Braves dropped 2 out of 3 to the Brewers between Milwaukee and Williamsport this weekend. Cubs got a huge win over the Mariners yesterday. 19-2, I think it was. PCA with a couple of homers, I believe. And then the Phillies, who are, like I said earlier, like the zombies in Michael Jackson's Thriller video, just slowly shuffling their way in your direction. Because they just refuse to die. They had that swoon after the All-Star break, and everybody thought, oh, here we go. They're not dying. They're not. And I've gone back and forth on this. Who's the team that I think can beat the Dodgers in October? And look, part of me wants it to be the Brewers. Jacob Mizorowski's a great story. The way they play ball, smaller market, all of that would be just a feel-good story. Plus, I've met Bob Uecker before, and he was just a genuinely good human being, and I'd love to think of Ueck smiling down from above on a Brewers trip to the World Series. Again, another team that's a rival of one of my favorites, but I just have a soft spot for it, the Brewers. But then I look at the rotations of the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Braves, the Phillies, and even the Cubs. And I don't know if there's a rotation better set up. I know Zach Wheeler has struggled as of late, but I don't know if there's a rotation better set up to compete with the Dodgers in October than the Phils right now. Sanchez, Nola. Nola's been on fire lately. Luzardo. Andrew Painter. When he's pitching well, he's not going to be a playoff starter, but a piggyback long man out of the bullpen maybe. It's not what the Dodgers are going to be able to throw up, especially if Ohtani's back on the mound in October. But there's a certain something in this Phillies team. And yesterday was a great example of that. They just don't die. And maybe it's because a lot of them realize they're towards the end of their careers. Schwarber's 33, so's Trey Turner, so's Bryce Harper, soon to be 34. Baum's in his 30s now. Luis Arias will be 30 next year. Hell, Bryson Stott's not young anymore. He's soon to be 29. Same with Brandon Marsh. Real Muto's 35. Justin Crawford's really the only young guy, forget in the lineup, on the roster, aside from the aforementioned Andrew Painter. So maybe it's that realization that their baseball mortality is not that far off into the distance. But there's something about this team that when they're faced with an opportunity to come back and shock everybody, they do it. And yesterday was a great example of that. They just refuse to die. And I think there's something about that. You can't measure it. There's no quantitative data to back it up. But when you get to October, and maybe we're talking about a rematch of the 2008-2009 NLCS, right? Those were some great series between the Dodgers and the Phils. And we got Dodgers-Phillies again. And we've got one team who's coming off back-to-back World Series titles and is just littered with talent in the Dodgers. And we got another team that has their own fair share of big names, but also, like I said, sees baseball mortality on the horizon and just comes up with a little extra something. The Rocky ethos. And so it wouldn't shock me if you asked me to pick a team, and I know I've picked the Brewers as recently as a week and a half ago. If you asked me to pick a team that could knock off the Dodgers in October, it's this Phillies team. And I don't know if they're going to stay this hot through the entire month of September. But what you've seen over the last 9 games is exactly why they're the team that can beat the Dodgers in October and stop them from going back to the World Series. Then again, they're the Dodgers. And they'll probably end up steamrolling everyone and everything in their path and winning a 3rd straight World Series. And then we'll be able to all take a step back and go, that's what's wrong with baseball. I'm serious. And we'll have an argument for our cap and floor system. Hopefully. But the Phillies could be that team on the National League side of things for me. Herm Edwards is coming up at the top of the hour. I want to talk to him about the Browns' decision to start Deshaun Watson over Shedeur Sanders. It screams to me of owner interference and Jimmy Haslam making the decision instead of letting Todd Monken be the head coach of this team. I know Todd Monken will probably stand up there in front of a podium in about 2 hours and tell everyone that it was his decision and the staff's decision to go with Deshaun going into week 1. He could say that till he's blue in the face. I'm not buying it. I also want to talk to Herm about what really is a litany of interesting quarterback battles around the NFL right now. I mean, really, you've got J.J. McCarthy being unseated by Carson Wentz, which we can talk more about later. Stetson Bennett, it feels like, just because he's been around so long, is taking control of the QB2 job with the Rams ahead of Ty Simpson. Jalen Daniels, not as experienced as Jake Browning, but pushing for that QB2 job in Tampa behind Baker Mayfield. Andy Dalton is 76 years old and still somehow hanging on in Philly. I'd rather have Tanner McKee as the backup. Justin Fields didn't look so hot running backwards the other night for Kansas City. Garrett Nussmeier looked pretty good. Is there a way Fields doesn't survive the preseason with Kansas City and they just decide to go with Nussmeier? And in places like New Orleans, Spencer Rattler and Zach Wilson, do they even have capable backups? Detroit. Look, I love Josh Dobbs as a human being. He's a rocket scientist, crazy smart, awesomely nice human. But Josh Dobbs and Luke Altmaier are the backup to Jared Goff. This is supposed to be the bounce back year for the Lions. What if Goff has to miss a couple of weeks? Again, Dobbs a great dude. He's had his moments here and there as a backup. But if I'm Dan Campbell, I'm not riding into battle with Josh Dobbs helming the offense in what's supposed to be a year we bounce back, compete for the division title, and maybe more. The Chargers behind Justin Herbert, who undoubtedly will get the hell beaten out of him again because, once again, their offensive line is dealing with injuries, have Trey Lance and DJ Uiagalelei. That's not a recipe for success. A lot of backup quarterback questions, some of which we'll ask Herm Edwards about in about 5 minutes. How about Cade Klubnik? He's not going to steal Geno Smith's job. Geno looked really good, 7-7 on his opening drive against the Steelers, mostly starting defense Friday night. You got Joe Milton taking control of the backup job in Dallas as well. We'll talk quarterbacks, specifically Watson and Sanders and the Browns and everything else going on around the NFL with the legend. ESPN NFL analyst Herm Edwards joins us next right here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
The news is in from Cleveland. It's going to be Deshaun Watson starting at quarterback, according to multiple sources, ahead of Todd Monken making the news official during his daily press conference around 12:50 Eastern later today. Is this the right decision? I've told you, I don't think it is. I think they should be going with Shedeur Sanders right out of the gate this year in Cleveland. We could talk about that and everything else we've seen through the first 2 weeks of the preseason with an absolute legend. Herm Edwards going to join us in just a second here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us across the country on Westwood One Sports affiliates from coast to coast, inside the Westwood One Sports app, the Odyssey app, and of course on Sirius XM channel 375. Who better to talk to after a big decision is made like this by the Cleveland Browns, and a man who had to make big decisions like this all the time as an NFL head coach? ESPN analyst Herm Edwards joins us now here on Westwood One Sports. Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, the Brown situation is very interesting. I was always a big believer in listening to your eyes, and my eyes tell me that I don't know if Shedeur, talent-wise, is a better quarterback than Watson, that played, 4 or 5 years ago when he was at his best. Mm-hmm. But I'm surprised, a little bit surprised that they go with Deshaun. After his interview, I just felt like he was a beaten guy, that he didn't have any, he didn't have any life in his body. When he talked about the fans booing him, and he's got every game he plays now, he's got 17 away games. That's not how you start the season off with your quarterback. But hey, coach made the decision. That's where they're going.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe too, Herm, that there probably weren't more cooks in the kitchen on this one helping Todd Monken make this decision. We know that the Browns are in a weird spot financially and with the cap if they were to decide to move on from Deshaun Watson at this point. Just in your experience, how messy can a big decision like this get between a coach and his front office and his ownership when they want to be involved in a decision that really should be 110% purely the coach's decision?
Well, that is right now the history of the Browns. This is why they sit in this situation, to be quite honest. At one time, I think it was last year or the year before, they had 5 quarterbacks. Going into camp, I said, how do you have 5 quarterbacks? I said, how do you do that? It's impossible. All these guys can't get reps, and they still don't know who the quarterback is. And I think at the end of the season, obviously Shedeur will probably play if this team doesn't obviously win. And then from there, they'll evaluate Shedeur and ask themselves this question. There's 7 quarterbacks in college football that are coming out this year. Are they in line to draft one of those guys?
Yeah, and you would think, knowing how the Browns operate, Herm, they'll probably go back to that. Well, you mentioned how they had 5 quarterbacks on the roster at one point last year. Right down the road from Cleveland and Pittsburgh, they got 4 quarterbacks right now, and they may end up keeping all 4 on the roster. Mike McCarthy said this morning he hasn't been a part of any decisions being made about their 53-man roster yet, but you got 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, you got established veteran backup quarterback Mason Rudolph, and then 2 young guys, Will Howard, who didn't look great Friday night against the Jets, and Drew Aller, who they just took in this year's draft and has looked better than Howard to this point. How do they balance? It's a near impossible proposition balancing now and the future when you're managing an NFL roster. How do you think the Steelers balance this, knowing that they've got the last year of Rodgers, but they've also got to find the future at the same time?
Yeah, well, this is why they're hopeful that the other 3 guys, one of these guys becomes a guy that they want after Aaron retires. And I think this might be it for Aaron, to be quite honest. So with that being said, can you keep 4 of them? You can. I mean, you can. You can put some. Now, somebody might come in and grab one of them if you don't hide him and you don't, practice squad player. But to put him on the 53, I mean, that's, put 4 quarterbacks on the 53 so no one comes and gets them. I mean, that's tough to do because of roster size, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that thing plays out. And maybe they feel like out of the 3 behind Rodgers, one of these guys is the guy, but they haven't decided who that is yet.
Herm Edwards, legendary head coach, both at the NFL and college levels with ESPN now, with us here on Westwood One Sports today, getting ready for week 3 of the NFL preseason. The team the Steelers played on Friday night, your former team, the Jets. Geno Smith actually looked really good on that first drive, Coach. I mean, 7-7. Cade Klubnik came in after that. He looked pretty good. You got Frank Reich at the helm of the offense now. Is there a reason to believe that if Geno just does what Geno's capable of and doesn't try to do too much, that this Jets offense might finally start to gel if Breece Hall can stay healthy, Garrett Wilson, Mason Taylor, all these weapons now at their disposal? Could the Jets shock some people this fall?
I'm hopeful. As you mentioned, Geno gave him some life. Geno played well. Now, I get it. It's a preseason game, but it doesn't matter. It's still a game, and that's all you can evaluate is what you see on the tape. He was very accurate with the ball, knew where to go with the ball, and I think Frank Reich is, understands Geno and can get him going early, because that's the whole key as a play caller with quarterbacks, and especially veteran guys. I mean, Frank, and he spoken to Geno. He kind of called plays where Geno felt comfortable, and that's always a good thing. So, they got a talented team, the Jets. They got a lot of talented players now, and I think they're going to be much improved. I say they win at least 8 games, but the division, can they beat New England? Can they beat Buffalo? Miami's kind of in that situation. They're trying to find their way, but I do think they'll be a better football team, the Jets.
You mentioned the Patriots. I know a lot of people look at New England, Coach, and they say, look at the schedule they had last year. And Mike Vrabel, I think, has tried to stay on top of his guys and motivating them by talking about, this isn't an especially deep roster, but they go out and they get A.J. Brown. And that doesn't change everything, but it changes a lot of calculus on the offensive side of the ball. How much is required of Drake May in taking yet another step forward this year for New England to prove to everybody that they weren't just a product of a soft schedule last year? Well, yeah,
that is all the talk, and this is what we do. On the off season, we try to find things to talk about before the season starts, and obviously the schedule, who you play and how you play is kind of important, and the schedule is a little bit tougher. But this New England team, I mean, they seem to be a team that's put together with a lot of guys that believe in what they do, and that's probably the most important thing. And getting A.J. Brown, that's what I want to see. How is that romance gonna turn out, right? I mean, right now he's being nice. He's on the sideline. It's preseason. All these veteran guys, I laugh at it anymore. They wear their baseball hats, right? They're baseball players. They don't play football anymore in the preseason. It baffles me. It really does. Because I truly believe this. The first 4 games of the season, they count. It's almost like a wash. You really don't know who you are when you don't play your players. You don't know who you are. No one knows. You're kind of sitting there wondering, are we any good? I got to get these guys ready to play. Well, the first 4 regular season games, they count now, but they're like preseason games because you're trying to figure out who you are, right? I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's something to watch as the game has progressed, how September has almost become, I don't want to call it a tune-up period, because like you said, the games still count, but it's really everybody sort of searching for an identity, trying to figure out if what they want to do is really going to work.
Correct. I mean, and so you got a chance. You're hoping, and like some of these teams are playing division games early, and that's never good. See, for me, if this is how it's going to go, I've always said the league's got to figure it out. And if you're an owner, you're sitting at these owners' meetings, go, hey, wait a minute, First 4 games, we can't have division games. They mean too much. They're too important. Because those things early, all of a sudden, you're a team that's trying to find yourself and you're playing division games. You play 2 division games and you lose those. That hurts you at the end. Because remember, you build your team through the draft and free agency trying to win your division. Those are important games. They're all important. But the division game? So for me, I would say, hey, look, if I was an owner, I'd say, you know what? We don't need any division games the first month of football.
It's actually a great idea. Herm Edwards with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. And what I've noticed through the first couple weeks of the preseason, Herm, is as injuries start to pile up, they're piling up in uncomfortable spots for contenders, in particular along the offensive line. We saw, it felt like the Ravens were searching for a starting center and they'd finally settled on one. He gets hurt. Tyler Biadasz gets hurt for the Chargers. You've got offensive line injuries and question marks starting to mount in Detroit. Just how hamstringing an effect can it be on an offense as you're trying to build chemistry and rhythm throughout training camp in the preseason to then all of a sudden think you've got your 5 guys up front and you've got to start to reshuffle that deck?
Yeah, that's tough because those guys play together, and it's funny you talk about injuries, and this is just my pet peeve on all this. More guys are getting injured in practice than they are in preseason games. But the guys don't want to play in the preseason games. It's like, this is baffling to me. I mean, we see injuries every day now, and guys aren't playing. They get hurt in practice. And I always said this, that's football. Guys get hurt. And we think these preseason, I got to protect him from the preseason because he's going to get hurt. There's more guys getting hurt in practice than there are guys playing in games. That's football. I know. I played it.
What do you think the solution is? Because we heard multiple players. I saw Saquon say it on Thursday or Friday. He doesn't really like these joint practices. And this is where you see a lot of this stuff happening. You see fights, you see skirmishes, guys getting rolled up on. What is the solution? In a world where eventually, and we all know it's going to happen eventually, we're going to get to 18 regular season games, and they'll probably cut down the preseason to just 2. And teams are going to have more and more of these joint practices and controlled scrimmages. Is there a fix for players getting hurt? Because I looked at it myself, and over the weekend I thought, why don't coaches, like you said, play your players in the games where it's at least a more controlled environment? You got 9 officials out there rather than 2 or 3 trying to police an entire 200-man joint practice. Is that the answer that you think some coaches come around to? Use the joint practices for the depth guys and let your starters get their reps in the preseason?
Yeah, that's what they do, and there's something to that. Having joint practices, I think it's good. But football's different than it used to be. I mean, it just is, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but I just think you got to handle it different. And I just believe this. I really do. And they'll say, well, coach is old. He's just an old school guy. Well, I don't know about being an old school guy. I do know this. The last time I checked, you know what football players do? They play football. You play football. That's what you do. You signed on to play football. And when the off season comes, you don't play football. You got almost 5-6 months. You don't play any football. Or when it's time to go practice and play football, that's what you signed on to do. You need to go do that. And I say that as a guy that played football at that level, right? My claim to fame, I tell people all the time, it wasn't, playing for that long. And, you know what my claim to fame was? Never missing a practice. Never missing a start. That was my claim to fame. And that was intentional because I said, I'm a football player. This is what I do. Don't tell me it's the preseason. I could care less. Football practice, I'm going to practice football. When the game starts, I'm going to play in the game. This is football. That's what you do. You don't wear your baseball hat. You say, hey, man, I'll wait till the regular season and I'll play. What are you talking about? You signed on to play football. Football is not a career. That's what these guys don't understand. It's not a career. You can't say I'm going to play 10 years. You're day-to-day as a football player. Day-to-day. And when you have a chance to go play football, go play football.
So that brings up an interesting question. I want to pivot in a different direction here. Coach Herm Edwards is with us on Westwood One Sports. I think you make a great point. You never know when the end is going to come, right? Like it might be a 10-year career. It might be a 2-year career. So I find it interesting when we see players like Daquan Wright, who gets released by the Browns, and he decides, because he's been granted due to an injunction, this 5th year of eligibility, right? He can go back now. He's going to go play at LSU this year. I personally totally understand the decision that Daquan Wright and any other players that decide to go down this path are making, because it's fighting, scratching, and clawing to stay on a practice squad and make $13,000 a week, or going back to college where you can now get paid a few $100,000 and you've got greater job security. How does this strike, though, the old school ball coach Herm Edwards, who's like, no, wait, once you get to the NFL, you stay in the NFL? How have you tried to reconcile both sides of that as you've seen this play out over the last couple of days?
I get it. I tell you this. When a guy does that, you know what it tells me? He wants to play football. He wants to play football. And he's going to do everything in his power to try to play football as long as he can. I'm okay with that. I really am. I just am. And for me, the college athlete anymore, he's just he's not a professional yet, but he's paid like a professional, right? In all sports. I get that too. I get it. It finally happened, and you saw it coming. We all saw this coming. And, the NCAA and everybody was fighting it. As long as they could fight it, it's over. You're paying the players now. You pay the players. How about that? How about that novelty? You pay these college athletes rather than room and board and a scholarship and books and tuition. And I get it. But now you got to pay them. If you want some good players, you got to pay them.
Yeah, I mean, the college football for 3/4 of a century, Coach, served as a free minor league system to the NFL. And now, well, maybe it's coming around and biting the NFL on the rear end just a little bit, and that some players are going to look at it and say, I got greater job security if I can go back to college for another year. I mean, it's funny to me, we didn't level the same criticisms at, for example, Dante Moore when he decided pre-draft. I understand pre-draft, but he decided, no, I'm going back to Oregon for another year because he knew he could make more money in Eugene than he would in the NFL.
I mean, really, the NFL, if you're an NFL coach or you work in that organization, you're going to get a more mature player coming out of college. Because a lot of these guys are going to stay. They're going to stay. They're going to play 4 years. They're going to be 5th-year seniors, some of these guys. You get a 22-year-old rather than a 19, 20-year-old guy and wants to leave early, go to the NFL. Now they stay in college. That's good for college. Good for the NFL, too. You get an older, more mature player. And you know what else you get? I hate to say this. When they come to the NFL, they never had money, a lot of these guys. And they get money. Just dealing with that is a headache. Well, now that clock starts earlier. It starts in college. So, it's just, there's a lot to this.
Herm, I love your insights. Love catching up with you today. Can't wait to talk to you again at some point later down the road, maybe during the regular season. Thanks so much for getting up early with us here on You Better You Bet. Enjoy the rest of the preseason and the launch into the regular season. Thanks again for the time.
Yeah, I'm about to go. I'm getting ready to go back to Bristol. I'm ready to go to work. So we got it. It's football time.
Let's go get it. Let's go play football. That's what we're doing. We play football.
That's right.
Herm Edwards, the legend, ESPN NFL analyst. Great stuff from him. You're a football player. You play football. And that's exactly what he said about Daquan Wright. Is exactly what I've been trying to say. The guy wants better security financially in the work that he does, because playing football is a job for him. And so he's going to where he's going to make more money and have greater security. Because legally he's been told he's allowed to do that. So why wouldn't he? You or I would do the exact same thing. And I do think it's interesting. Again, I know it's not total apples to apples, but we all sat here and applauded Dante Moore. Great job, Dante. You're dodging the Jets to stay in college. Smart move, kiddo. Good job. What's the difference? He decided to go back to college for another year because he knew there was more money and greater security there. That's exactly what Daquan Wright is doing right now. But you're all up in arms because he spent a few weeks in a training camp and played a couple preseason games. Oh, it's the end of college football. Please. Coming up, I think we may have found our first bust from what was supposed to be a legendary quarterback class. And I'll tell you exactly who it is. That's next right here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Before we wrap up the Power Hour, the final hour of the show here on Westwood One Sports, I will get you a bet that I absolutely love for this weekend. And our 3 stars of the day, our 3 favorite moments of the show, which I can guarantee will include just a taste of what we got from the coach, Herm Edwards, just a couple of minutes ago. Great stuff from him on everything from Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson all the way down to Daquan Wright going back to college. That's why you get us in podcast form. In case you missed all that, wherever you get your podcast, just search You Better You Bet. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. I think we've got our first bust of the 2024 quarterback class. That was the class that had 6 quarterbacks in the first round, tied the record set in 1983. And yeah, old man story time, kids. Go ahead. Sit down. Crisscross applesauce by the fire. I'm going to read you a little story about the 1983 draft. I shouldn't have to read the story. I mean, there's a great documentary from Elway to Marino, a 30 for 30 that was done years ago. But John Elway went first overall to the then Baltimore Colts, for whom he refused to play for. Eventually ended up getting traded to Denver. Went on to multiple AFC championship games, multiple Super Bowls, ended up winning 2 of them towards the end of his career. Ended up paying off in the long run on them being the first overall pick in 1983. You had Jim Kelly go 14th overall to Buffalo, and after a couple of years in the USFL, ended up going to Buffalo. 4 Super Bowl appearances. You had Tony Eason go 15th overall to the New England Patriots. He did eventually end up being a bust. But he did play in Super Bowl 20. Not very well. Got benched in that game for Steve Grogan as the Patriots got absolutely waxed by the Super Bowl Shuffle Bears. You had Ken O'Brien go 24th to the New York Jets. He made 2 Pro Bowls. He wasn't terrible. And Dan Marino went 27th overall to the Miami Dolphins. And in addition to helping Ace Ventura save Snowflake the Dolphin, he also went to a Super Bowl and set a lot of NFL passing records. So the 83 class, oh wait, who did I forget? 7th overall, Todd Blackledge to the Kansas City Chiefs. It pains me to recognize that Blackledge was a total bust, Penn State guy and all. But he was an unmitigated disaster. By his 4th year in the league, everyone saw the writing on the wall. Well, here we are in the year of our Lord 2026, just 2 years removed, a little more than 2 years removed, 2 years and 4 months removed from the 2024 NFL draft, and we already see the writing on the wall with one guy in particular. It's not Caleb Williams, 1st overall in 2024. Caleb Williams is probably in the best situation currently of any of the quarterbacks taken in that draft. There's more ceiling to find. Feels like last year may be the floor now for Caleb Williams. To the moon for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Jaden Daniels went 2nd overall that year. He's got an NFC championship game appearance in his rookie year under his belt. If he can stay healthy, he's got a very productive career with a few more long playoff runs ahead of him at some point. I know there are people that are very doubtful of that, given the giant questionability of his health. But I think Jaden Daniels has got a lot of very good football left in him. Drake May, 3rd overall that year. He's already got a Super Bowl appearance under his belt. Then you got Michael Penix at number 8. Oof. He is supposed to be full participant in practice again this week, so maybe he'll take control of that starting quarterback job in Atlanta because Tua Tagovailoa has looked like hot garbage so far. Atlanta needs somebody to play just capable quarterback at this point. I mean, their other options are Cooper Rush, and maybe Jack Strand, who's actually looked the best of any of their quarterbacks in the preseason. So they need Penix. But the jury's still out on Penix in the grand scheme of what his career can become. The one we already know is a bust from 2024, J.J. McCarthy. Yes, I'm calling it now with 95% of the precincts reporting. J.J. McCarthy is the first bust of the 2024 draft class. He is the Todd Blackledge of this class. And it didn't take 4 years as it took the Chiefs to figure out with Blackledge. It took about 2 years and a training camp. And hell, he was hurt half the time for the Vikings to figure out that J.J. McCarthy isn't the guy. They go out, they get Kyler Murray. Murray wins the job. And now here's the problem. Not only has J.J. McCarthy lost the battle for QB1, I don't think he's even worth the QB2 job. Carson Wentz has played better than him in the preseason. McCarthy had one really nice completion to Ty Felton on Saturday. But aside from that pass, 4 of 9 for 31 yards. And he hasn't shown the ability to get away from the pass rush. I know the offensive line he's been playing behind hasn't been the greatest when he has played this preseason. But it feels like every pressure turns into a hopeless scramble drill. Like, there are, in some young quarterbacks, you see their ability to break the pocket when there's pressure, scramble, extend the play, and look downfield while they do it. I don't know what Drew Aller is going to become for the Steelers, if anything, but I've seen that in the preseason so far. I saw that when he was playing well at Penn State a couple of years ago, before last year's abysmal season and injury. I saw it again Friday night against the Jets, when the Steelers' offensive line was a mess and the Jets were creating pressure almost snap after snap after snap. Aller continued to evade pressure as much as he could and get the ball downfield. Had one great throw to one of their backup tight ends down the sideline. And I don't see that from J.J. McCarthy. I just don't. I see fear and panic rather than I'm going to be in control of extending the play. And the fear and the panic is why Carson Wentz is more suited to be the backup in Minnesota. And if J.J. McCarthy is relegated to QB3 duty, if J.J. McCarthy is relegated to third string quarterback, that's it. It's done. It's over. He's the first bust of the 2024 class. Maybe he plays out the string this year in Minnesota and moves on somewhere else. Maybe they cut him in the offseason. I don't know. And he moves on somewhere else and gets a chance to make something of it somewhere else. I don't think so. He is this year's Todd Blackledge. No disrespect to Todd Blackledge. All due respect. Now I can say whatever I want. Respectfully, Todd Blackledge. J.J. McCarthy is this year's Todd Blackledge. What the hell is going on in San Francisco? Can somebody fill me in here? Hold on. Let me bring up the old breaking news machine. By the way, this segment, sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. Breaking news, apparently 49ers CEO Jed York has been arrested. I mean, how many needles have been stuck into the 49ers voodoo doll this year? What is going on between all the injuries and now the Kyle Shanahan auto accident, and now Jed York arrested yesterday in East Palestine, Ohio. Wait, this is like right down the road. Pleaded no contest Monday to misdemeanor disorderly conduct and possessing criminal tools. What are criminal tools? He received 1 day in jail and a $1,150 fine. Charges stemmed from an initial prostitution allegation that was amended Court records show a plea agreement was filed. Huh. So, an interesting weekend for Jed York. What are the criminal tools? I need to know. What qualifies as a criminal tool? Can somebody please dig into that one for me? Like, is it a crowbar, a pry bar, one of those black ski masks? What are criminal tools? So, a very interesting year has gotten even more interesting for the San Francisco 49ers. Jed York, CEO, arrested yesterday in Ohio and pleaded no contest to misdemeanor disorderly conduct and possessing criminal tools. Why does that make me laugh? Not that he got arrested, just the criminal tools part makes me laugh. While we're speaking of backup quarterbacks, by the way, because we were talking about J.J. McCarthy, I'm here to tell you, this is my, it might be a freezing cold take in a week, but my prediction for those of you interested in what's going to happen with the Steelers' backup quarterback position, because they've got Drew Aller, who I mentioned earlier. They've got Will Howard, who looked terrible Friday night. They've got veteran backup Mason Rudolph, and they got 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. I think they're going to keep all four. I do, which is crazy, but Mike McCarthy likes to have young quarterbacks to work with, and he's going to want to work with both Howard and Aller, I think. Unless Howard has another game so bad on Thursday night against the Bills that the Steelers realize they can wave him through to the practice squad with nobody claiming him. But again, we just went over what the backup quarterback situations look like in some places. You're telling me there's not a team out there that wouldn't take a flyer on Will Howard as their third quarterback? I don't know. It is Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. We will give you our 3 favorite moments of the show, our 3 stars of the day, and I got a bet for Saturday you're absolutely going to love. I love it anyway. That's next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Our 3 favorite moments of the show on the way before we wrap up here. Our 3 stars of the day. Some epic peak Herm Edwards from earlier in the show. Plus an assertion from the great Mary Kay Cabot that people in the Browns organization still want to do the right thing, even though they're screwing up and doing the wrong thing today. We'll let you hear all of that. Mary Kay joined us before the news became official, right before the news became official, that the Browns will be naming Deshaun Watson their starting quarterback week 1. Todd Monken meets with the media in Berea, Ohio, about 1 hour from now. He'll be forced to try and stand up for a decision that I'm sorry, I will not buy that it was his decision. I don't care what he says when he stands up there in an hour. This is Jimmy Haslam, maybe the worst owner in sports, once again meddling where he should keep his nose out of the mess and making the mess worse somehow. We'll get to all of that with the 3 stars. I absolutely love the fact that college football is back in 5 days. I know it's week 0. I know there aren't a bunch of big, really exciting matchups, but it's just the start of college football. Even if it's not a full slate of games, right? It's still enough for me to just, it's an appetizer, right? It's the chips and salsa. Except in this case, they're not going to ask me if I want refills and I'm going to eat way too much and then not have enough room left for dinner. It's just enough. And that's why I can't wait. I love college football. And this is just, like I said, the appetizer. It starts at noon Eastern on Saturday. North Carolina and TCU meeting in Dublin. TCU, you may remember, absolutely waxed UNC in the opener last year in Chapel Hill. And yes, TCU is breaking in a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback. Josh Hoover has moved on to Indiana. But lest we forget, North Carolina was hot garbage last year and has somehow become worse. They've gone from hot garbage to full-on flaming dumpster fire. And they've put GM Mike Lombardi on administrative leave. HR investigation going on. Who knows? Don't want to know, to be quite honest. I mean, I do, but I don't. And they're starting a quarterback who is on his 4th team in 6 years. And not because he's good, because he just keeps bouncing from team to team. So TCU laying 7.5. I'm all over the Horned Frogs Saturday at noon as the college football season gets started. Don't forget to download that Westwood One Sports app because all the biggest college games and, of course, your home for the NFL is right here on Westwood One. All right, time for our 3 favorite moments of the show. Our 3 stars of the day. Let's go.
3.
This specific case is rooted in a state court ruling in Baton Rouge, not surprisingly. And that state court issued a temporary restraining order which allowed 16 football players to essentially use a loophole to come back. This is tied to the NCAA making the so-called 5-and-5 or age-based eligibility rules. And Daquan Wright is one of the players who played for 4 years in college. And if he had been included in the current class, in that rule had been passed earlier, would have had an option to play back in college this year.
Instead, Daquan Wright wasn't presented that option, entered the draft, ended up signing with the Browns, going through training camp with them, and is being placed on waivers for the purpose of giving him his release so that he can go sign in Baton Rouge and play for his former head coach at Ole Miss, where he was a second-team All-SEC tight end, Lane Kiffin. And this is what each and every one of us would do if we were afforded the opportunity to do it. We would go to a place where we have better job security and we'll make more money, and that's what happens in free enterprise. And like it or not, college football is a capitalistic enterprise, and people will do whatever they can to make the most money. It is not 4 years and flip the tassel on your mortarboard and make sure you get a good education. That's the funniest part of all the criticism I see on social media. Well, why do they even call it college football anymore if they don't go to college? Where have you been for 40 years? Like, academics have taken the priority in college football in particular, major college sports in general, over the last half century. Guys go to make money. Daquan Wright has a better, more secure opportunity to make money this year at LSU. You and I would do the same thing. Oh, it's the end of college football. It'll be fine. Just relax. Go in the corner and sip some tea, Grandpa. Number 2.
2.
Well, I think the truth of the matter here is that everybody in the organization, all they cared about, all they wanted was for Todd Monken to choose a quarterback that would give them the best chance to win. And I know that sounds like rhetoric, but that's really the truth. They want to get out of losing heck that they've been in for the last couple of years. They've won 8 games in the last 2 seasons, and they just don't want to have that losing culture infiltrate this young football team.
That's all well and good that they may be telling Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer all of that. They're lying. They don't care about winning in Cleveland. If they cared about winning, they'd put the better quarterback in there. What they care about in Cleveland is what the owner wants, and the owner wants to save face and maybe squeeze some kind of value out of Deshaun Watson, the sunk cost that is a wildly ridiculous overcommitment to Deshaun Watson several years ago. That's why this decision was made to start Deshaun Watson and not Shedeur Sanders. So, look, Mary Kay's an excellent reporter. She's covered the Browns for years. I appreciate that that's what they told her, but they lied. They don't care about winning in Cleveland. If they did, they would have named Shedeur Sanders the starter. Finally, our number 1 star of the day.
1.
I mean, the last time I checked, you know what football players do? They play football. Football practice, I'm going to practice football. When the game starts, I'm going to play in the game. This is football. That's what you do. You don't wear your baseball hat. You signed on to play football.
You play to win the game. You play football. Another legendary rant from the great Herm Edwards. Appreciate him joining the show earlier in this hour. You play football. Why are you sitting around not playing during the preseason? I really do think there's a lot of evaluation that needs to happen by head coaches around the league after this preseason is over about what's more valuable for your true starters, the guys that you know are going to be in the lineup week 1, and you're just trying to get ready for week 1, and all the other guys that are battling for jobs and battling for positions. And at a certain point, if I were a head coach, I would come around to the idea of joint practices and controlled scrimmages are for the depth guys to fight for spots. Because clearly they've become the wild, wild west, the bull ring of testosterone that they've become, where guys get in fights and guys get hurt. Whereas preseason games, you got more officials out there, there's structure to it. More often than not, guys aren't taking runs at your starters. And that's what I would do. I would say, hey, if I'm going to play my starters at all, it's not going to be in these controlled scrimmages or in these joint practices. It's going to be in the actual preseason games. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today. Double J, John Jastrzemski will be in tomorrow. Sal Licata on Wednesday. I'll be back Thursday and Friday. Thanks as always to Laura on the board. Thanks to Mike on the video. Thanks to Kenny, Tyler, and the esteemed executive producer Bill Zimmerman back after a couple of weeks off. It was good to hear and see from him again. He just threw in the notes. Jed York was arrested at the Wheat Hill mobile home community. What the hell was Jed York doing? Now I want to look up the Wheat Hill mobile home community in East Palestine, Ohio. That's how I'll spend my afternoon. Good luck to everybody in Cleveland. Black and Abdallah up next right here on Westwood One Sports.